Hello, welcome to another edition of Prove All Things. I want to thank everybody who's joining us today, whether you're watching live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or on the CGI Digital Network app, whether that's on your phone, tablet, or television. We thank you for joining us live. Also, want to thank everyone, most people who are watching this recorded. We thank you for joining us as well. I am joined from California by co-host Mike James. How you doing, Mike?
Hey Jeff, doing well. Good to see you there. Still enjoying the warm weather here in California. But how are things in Atlanta weather-wise?
Oh no, it was warm yesterday. I think our heat index was 110. So yeah, they say it feels like 110. That's 110 to me. It was hot. It was hot yesterday. We have actually a hot tub at our house, and like I was like well, I don't want to use it anytime now because like it's kind of miserable sitting in a hot tub outside. When the weather's warmer than the hot tub.
I
You know?
got you. I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be going north of the border this weekend. I'm going to be speaking up in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada. I haven't been up there since COVID hit.
Hmm.
I was going up there when I was back east for a while, and
Yeah.
getting up there every few months or quarters or every 6 months. And I haven't been there in a while, so it'll be good to see the folks up in Canada again.
So that's your first time going to Canada since COVID?
Yeah, since COVID. Yeah, yeah.
Have you been in the country anywhere else, or is that first
You
time?
know what? I haven't since that time.
Okay, wow, yeah. So yeah, I think things are definitely have gotten a lot better in that respect.
Yeah,
So
for sure, for sure.
yeah, so yeah, things are going well. We had a baptism this past Sabbath at our church here in Atlanta. It's definitely a very uh, exciting thing to have. Angels were praising God in heaven for the baptism, and we were able to webcast that because the place we rent has a baptismal up front, so we were able to and has several cameras, so we were able to get all the angles and stuff to be able to. And the person that had agreed that they wanted to be like an example for others, and it's like, all right, because we'll do it. If you don't want to be on TV, you don't have to. We'll baptize privately as well, or in other
Yeah.
situations. But they wanted to do it as an example to others, and we definitely it was a great occasion, and we're looking forward to some big things this weekend. We have a back to school splash at my wife's church, the local Independent Church of God. They do that Saturday evening after services, which is like inflatables and splat and water things for the kids while there's a cookout and all the other older people can sit around, talk, and eat and stuff. And then the next day we're having a family get together at the Stone Mountain State Park here in Atlanta. That I think we have over 50 people signed up. Maybe we're getting close to 100. We may expect of just different churches of God coming together just to have a picnic at the park, and hopefully we'll have good weather, and that will hopefully be fun for everyone as well.
Very good. That sounds great. You got me beat. I got nothing on the calendar out here like that going
Yeah,
on right now.
yeah.
So yeah.
All right. So again, good to see you again. I'm going to bring in our guest, and I'll let you, since you know him, I'll let you give an
Yeah.
introduction
Okay.
of Sam as we bring him in here. How you doing, Sam?
Okay, yeah. So this is a good friend of mine since grade school. Actually, I've known this
Wow.
guy. His name is Sam Simon, and we are good friends. I've known Sam most of my life. As I said, grade school, junior high school, and we continue to stay in touch. And Sam has a long, interesting career, most of it in the FBI. And for that reason, we've brought him onto our show today to begin to discuss things about the FBI with the title of Prove All Things. There's a lot of information out there that people have, what they think the government is doing or not doing, and all
Yeah.
sorts of things in that regard. So, Sam, why don't you give us an intro, little bio information, and then we'll start getting into our discussion.
Well, Jeff, Mike, thank you both very much for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and your folks. You both kind of made me giggle when you were talking about, how hot it is in Atlanta and California. We've had like 30 straight days of over 100 degrees down here in Texas. But yeah, I've known Mike my whole life. He was the best man at my wedding since like the second grade. We grew up literally across the alley from each other. So Mike asked me to do a quick, brief bio. Always kind of a weird kid. I always knew what I wanted to do for a living. I wanted to do two things. I wanted to be the captain on an aircraft carrier because my uncle was in the Navy, and I wanted to be an FBI agent because when I was young, our family was one of the first families to get cable TV, and we had WOR TV out of New York, and they had the Untouchables on at like 11 o'clock at night. I used to watch all the Untouchables, and I was like, that's what I want to do. Well, asthma kept me out of the Navy, but it didn't keep me out of the Army. I went to Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, which is a small Catholic school in Pittsburgh, and got my degree in criminal justice and political science because I wanted to be an FBI agent. And a funny little story, my father drove a truck for the local newspaper for the Pittsburgh Press, and the guy he drove the trucks with, a coworker of his son was the director of the FBI's National Academy, the training academy, when I was in college. So he brought me down and gave me a tour of the university or of the campus. And at the end of the tour, he basically said, you're a really good kid, but we're not hiring you out of the university. We hire lawyers and accountants, and you're neither. So you need to either go to the state police or the military. And I told him about my issues with the Navy. And he said, well, you know, I've got a friend in the Army, and he introduced me to this Army colonel who gave me some really good advice. He said, you're going to have a degree and you're going to want to go to officers candidate school. Don't do that because you're not making a career out of the military. You want to get in the bureau. Here's the job that you want to take. You want to enlist and you want to become a language specialist because language specialists hold top secret security clearances. And that's what you're going to sell to the FBI after your military career. So I enlisted in the Army. My father thought I threw away 5 years of college. And it was, other than the 16 weeks in Fort Leonard Wood for basic training, it was a fantastic career. Whenever anybody thanks me for my service, I say, no, thank you, because they sent me out to California for 2 years where they taught me how to speak Russian. And I left California a fluent Russian speaker. And then I went from California to San Angelo, Texas, to do some job-related training. And I spent 6 months in San Angelo, and that's where I fell in love with Texas. And that's why I live here today. And then they sent me to Germany for 3.5-4 years. And I worked an active mission against the Russians. I got to travel all over Europe. It was a great experience. And then I came out of the military and I joined the FBI. And being a fluent Russian speaker and being having served an active mission against the Russians for 5 years, what did the FBI do? When they sent me to Washington, D.C., the Washington field office, they put me on the gang squad because that makes all the sense in the world. So I became a gang investigator, which helped me a lot because it taught me how to be a good detective. It taught me how to talk to a wide range of people. I love to tell my students.
What is a gang? What is the gang thing for those of us who may not know?
So the gang squads, we would go after very violent street gangs like the Bloods, the Crips, Los Mochateros, MS-13, those kind of groups. Now in DC, we didn't have the big organized gangs. We didn't have the Peace Stone Nation or the Bloods or Crips. We had very, very violent street gangs. So we targeted those guys and we arrested those guys. Like my first case, I was a rookie agent. So I was just, doing what my bosses told me to do. It wasn't my case. It was their case. But it was a case involving the murder of 2 FBI agents and a Washington, D.C. police sergeant. This guy walked into police headquarters in downtown D.C. and shot up the cold case homicide squad, killed 2 FBI agents and a police sergeant, and injured a 3rd agent. That was my very first case I worked on. So I worked gangs for about 5 years, and then I promised my wife I'd do something a little less dangerous. And this was before 9/11, so I transferred to a terror.
All right. I think we may have lost Sam for a second. So
Okay. Okay. What? You're
Am I
back.
back yet?
yeah, you're
Yeah.
back. We're back. All right.
Okay. So I did the gang squad for 5 years.
Yes.
And then I promised my wife, because it was a really dangerous job, I promised my wife I'd go to another squad. And I transferred to a hybrid counterintelligence, counterterrorism squad.
Mhm.
And this was before 9/11. And before 9/11, it was great because I was going to the gym, I was working 9 to 5, I was seeing my family again, and then
Mhm.
9/11 hit. And I started working 10, 12, 14-hour days again, 6, 7
Mhm.
days a week. And I spent 60 some straight days at the Pentagon. After my time at the Pentagon, I promoted to FBI headquarters as a supervisor, and I ran several national programs. One of the things I was blessed to do in my career was I was one of the senior supervisors in charge of the investigation of Saddam Hussein and his regime for war crimes violations and crimes against humanity.
Okay.
I spent 3 years at headquarters, and I was sent out here to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And initially I was assigned to the Dallas division on a counterintelligence squad. But then 3 months in, my boss moved me over to Fort Worth, and I ran the Joint Terrorism Task Force in Fort Worth for 7 years.
Mhm.
We were responsible for 28 counties west of Dallas. We had a lot of really good cases. After my time on the desk, I wanted to go overseas, and I had done some really, really dangerous deployments. So I built a pretty strong resume, and I applied for Riga, Latvia, and Kiev, Ukraine, because of my Russian language. And they were going to
Mhm.
put me in Kiev, Ukraine. And this was before the initial Russian invasion.
Mhm.
And I was pleased as punch because I had been to Kiev before, and it's a pretty city. And I knew I could take my wife around Europe from
Mhm.
there. And about 2 weeks after they assigned me to Kiev, they called up and said, "Hey, we have a situation. We can't put you in Kiev. We're going to find some place to put you." And of all places, they put me in Athens, Greece, and it was phenomenal. I
Mhm.
worked out of the embassy in Athens for 3 years, and we were responsible for both Athens and the country of Cyprus. So every 6 weeks, I'd fly down to Cyprus for a week, and I'd work in the embassy in Cyprus.
Mhm.
And I did that for 3 years, and I came back home to Dallas, and I started preparing for my post-bureau career. I started teaching at Texas Christian University.
Okay.
I did that for about 5 years, teaching criminal justice programs. And now last year, I transferred from Texas Christian University up to the University of North Texas, the Mean Green, in Denton, Texas. And that's where I teach now.
Okay. So yeah, that's pretty impressive
That's a little bit
credentials you
about
have there. I'm pretty impressed with your credentials. So uh, I'm glad to have you on today. So and good, it's good to hear your connections with Mike. So what is it you wanted to discuss today that kind of relates to our prove all things idea?
So, if Mike will allow me, I do want to tell one short story. And this is kind of the craziness of like how life works out.
Mm-hmm.
I was working as a gang investigator for about 3 years, and they sent several of us over to Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police. And we were assigned to a cold case homicide project. They had pulled like 400 unsolved homicides in D.C. And they sent these investigations over to Langley to have the agency analysts review these cases to see if they could come up with new leads.
It was
So myself and my detective partner were assigned 5 cases.
Sam, I'm just going to interject.
Yeah.
I was on a rotation to the National Drug Intelligence Center up in Johnstown, PA. So there were some CIA folks there and all kinds of different agencies. So that's where I was. Just to interject. Okay.
Yeah. So my detective partner and I get these 5 homicide cases, and we're reading through them, and we get to the last page where the analysts, the DIA, CIA, the other analysts provide their, analysis. And I read the analysis of this one case and I see the analyst named Michael James. And I thought, no, there's no way. So I call him up and I'm like, what do you think you're doing trying to tell me how to do my job? You're an analyst, you're not a detective. So we ended up closing 2 of the 3 cases that Mike sent our way. One we closed because the offender had committed suicide and basically confessed to the homicide in his suicide note. The second one, though, we found some additional evidence that the original police officers didn't have, and we were going to take it for prosecution. So they sent us to the U.S. Attorney's Office to present it to a United States attorney, an assistant United States attorney. And the homicide detective, when I walk into the office, and it's another buddy of Mike's from high school, a guy named Steve Durham, and he ended up prosecuting the case for us. So there's 3 kids from the same high school. We all played ball together, and here we are working a cold case homicide in DC.
Yeah, that's an interesting story.
Let's talk. I want to talk a little bit in general first, before we get into kind of the conspiracy thing. I want to talk about the FBI in general, because when I talk to my students, a lot of them don't have a real understanding of what the real FBI is. Their understanding of the FBI is what's on TV and what's in the movies, which is cool and fun, but isn't what we do for a living. What we do for a living isn't all that cool. I've done some really cool and fun things, but the majority of the times I'm sitting at a computer writing reports or taking online training or down at the firing range qualifying with my weapon. It's a lot of mundane work. So the FBI, for those that don't know, we have a very specific mission. Our mission is to investigate allegations of federal crimes. We don't have broad jurisdiction all over the country. I can't go into a 7-Eleven and arrest somebody for shoplifting. I can't investigate somebody for domestic abuse unless it happens on federal property. But we don't respond to domestics. We don't do petty crimes. We're responsible for violations of the United States Code, particularly Title 18, which is general crimes, and Title 21, which are drug crimes. So our jurisdiction isn't limited geographically, it's limited legally. The next thing I want to talk about with the FBI is its general structure. FBI is headquartered in Washington, D.C., in the J. Edgar Hoover building. Now, what's supposed to happen in the J. Edgar Hoover building is oversight of programs. You have program managers there. When I was there, I was responsible for the criminal investigations of a group called Hamas, which is a Palestinian terrorist organization. I didn't operate investigations out of headquarters. We have field offices that do the investigations. I look at the big picture, the overall picture of the program. Do my agents have the resources they need to conduct their investigations? Are their investigations targeting the main individuals of this terrorist organization that we need targeted? Are they doing things in accordance with Bureau guidelines and policies? That's the role of headquarters, to manage these big programs. And then across the country and in all of our territories overseas, San Juan, Guam, Alaska, Hawaii, the states, and all the continental United States, we have divisions. We have 56 field divisions. Here in Texas, we have 4. We have Dallas, El Paso, San Antonio, and Houston. It's at the division, the field office level, that cases get worked out of, investigations get worked out of. And within the divisions, many of the divisions are broken up into smaller sub offices. I was in the Fort Worth office of the Dallas division. And we had about 100 people in the Fort Worth office. We have some offices like Wichita Falls, Texas, where we only have 2 agents. The Fort Worth office is a subdivision of a major office, but we were bigger than like the entire Springfield division or the entire Anchorage division. So that's
Sam.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What's the are you allowed to give the numbers for FBI like throughout the world, how many
Yes,
people work?
we have approximately 30,000 employees in the FBI. And of those 30,000, I think approximately 13,000 are FBI special agents that do investigations or supervise investigations. And then
Okay.
the large majority of the population of the workforce are either analysts or professional staff. And professional staff runs a wide variety of jobs. We have lawyers who are there to review our affidavits for search warrants, who are there to settle cases when we break down a door and somebody wants their door, fixed. They go to the FBI lawyers and they send them a check to fix the door. When agents are involved in motor vehicle accidents, they have to deal with that. We have, like in Dallas, we have 2 full-time photographers. Their whole job is to be a professional photographer. They go out on crime scenes and do crime scene photography. They go out to special events and photograph those special events. So and then we have the FBI laboratory where we have scientists, working in the lab. So we have the agents, we have the analysts, and we have the professional staff. That's a little bit of an overview, a general overview of kind of the Bureau.
Okay.
Is there anything you want to go into more specifics about that, Mike?
I kind of understand that and have some background in that. Jeff, are there any questions you have about FBI agents for support? Anything about that?
No, I think you did a very good job of explaining. I never have even thought about how many are out there and where they're at and what they do. Usually, again, we get our view from television, and there's definitely people. The last thing people want is an FBI agent at their door. I know that's usual consensus among folks as well.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to get into right now, Sam, is a little bit about the political atmosphere at the agency these days. We're seeing things in the news. We're reading newspaper articles, and I don't remember, in the 70s or 80s that there was this kind of political football being played at the FBI, the CIA, the various agencies. There seems to be more of a politicalization there. Can you speak a little bit about that? Maybe how that got started with the FBI and how I think that the rank and file are doing their jobs. I think that at the higher levels, we've got some problems. You got a lawyer here who does something wrong, and then the whole FBI has egg on its face. Can you speak a little to that, maybe the history behind that?
So, yeah, that's good. Require a little bit of a history lesson. And I want to emphasize something. Everybody's talking about the weaponization of the Department of Justice, the weaponization of the FBI.
Okay, we're losing you right now, Sam. You'll probably come back. Purposes. So we missed a little bit of that about right when you were getting into it.
Okay.
You cut off.
Okay.
You cut off for a second.
It's
Just
going
start
to take
over.
a little bit of a minor history lesson, and the one main point I wanted to make is, the weaponization of the Department of Justice and the FBI. It's not a new phenomenon, and it's not limited to the FBI. People who have been in political power have used police departments. They've used the CIA. They've used the military to consolidate their power. So it's not a new phenomenon. I think one of the issues we're having today is it's been so widely reported, and it's really the focus of the media. where I saw, this is my personal opinion of how the FBI got to the point where it is today. It started back under Director Freeh. Director Louis Freeh was an FBI agent. And Director Louis Freeh, much like Director Hoover, had the FBI's interest at his heart. He saw the FBI as an apolitical agency that was designed to investigate violations of the federal law, no matter who was involved in that violation. Mm-hmm. And he was very adamant about going after, the folks in the White House at the time that he was the director. And he went after some really important political figures in Congress. And I don't think people like that. They don't want to go back to an FBI, an independent FBI, where they can be looked at, for violations of federal crimes. Every director after Louis Freeh was a political appointee who came from the Department of Justice, who worked under a particular or who worked under a attorney general and can toe the party line. So from Director Mueller through Director Comey through Director Wray, they're all people that are the antithesis of Director Freeh, who was a staunch independent director. Mm-hmm. 9/11 hit, and some really radical changes were being thought of in Congress about breaking up the FBI. They were thinking of creating what now is, I guess, for better terms, DHS, the Department of Homeland Security investigators. They were talking about building this kind of MI6 British model where they took the security branch of the FBI away from the FBI. They were going to leave a shell of the FBI to work bank robberies and extortions and public corruption and white collar crimes. My fear in that was there was going to be no budget to support those missions. So the FBI was going to be a shell of itself. And they were going to create this new agency to go after terrorists and homeland security and all this stuff. But my fear was we were going to lose the branding of the FBI. I've seen it firsthand. When I came out here to West Texas, I went and met with some sheriffs. And the only reason they let me through that door was because I was with the FBI. Mm-hmm. If I was with some, fly-by-night new agency, they wouldn't have given me the time of day. But I was an FBI man, and that's how I got into their office.
Hey, Sam, so, I want to
Director Mueller stepped in, and I give him credit. He saved the FBI, but we saved ourselves almost at the risk of selling our souls. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to interrupt you for 1 minute, Sam. I want you to continue that, but we got a question coming in on one of the websites I'm monitoring. It's how does the FBI work with the county's local sheriffs? What's the framework in how they will deal with a case?
Yeah. So
does this? Yeah.
So there's a couple of things, and this goes back to that overview of the FBI, and I do this with my students. There's a lot of misconceptions because in the movies, we all see it. Two guys in black suits with the Ray-Ban glasses come in and say, we're the FBI, we're in charge. That's not how it works. No federal agency has primacy over a state agency or a local agency. We have to work together. And I can't order a state trooper to do something. And a state trooper can't order me to do something. Jurisdictions get really, really messy. Here in Fort Worth, we have the Naval Air Station, and we have about 12 different agencies that have jurisdiction in and around the Naval Air Station, and that's where they make the JSF strike fighters. So we used to hold monthly meetings where all the agencies got together and we just talked about things. What happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? I can't tell I can't tell a local sheriff what to do. And if I'm in the scope of my employment, a local sheriff can't tell me what to do. Now, if I'm doing something stupid and I'm doing something that doesn't fall within my jurisdiction or my jobs, they absolutely can tell me what to do, and I have to listen to them. So that, I hope that kind of explains,
Yeah.
who's under what authority. The
Mhm.
FBI, the DEA, the ATF, and the U.S. Marshal are under the authority of the Attorney General of the United States. That's who we report to directly.
Okay, very good.
There
Very
was another
good. Now,
question that I really wanted to answer
yeah.
from one of your audience about what advice would you have for a high school student. So my number one advice for a high school student who's interested in a career in the FBI is, remember, you're going to be in a career of law enforcement, so you have to uphold laws. You got to be careful with who you're hanging out with, who you're associating with, and what you're doing either at school or away from school. I have so many students who come to me who say they want to be in the FBI, and unfortunately, they come from states where it's legal to smoke marijuana, but it's illegal federally to smoke marijuana. And I have to tell them, you're not going to be eligible to enroll in the FBI for at least 3 years because there's a 3-year waiting period from the last time you smoked marijuana. They get all upset. It's legal. It's legal. And I said, federally, it's not legal yet. So you have to abide by those laws. So the first thing I'd say is absolutely, make sure you're living a just life. Because when we do a background, we go deep into your history. We go look at your Facebook page, your WhatsApp page, your TikTok page, all that, your Instagram, your IG accounts. We'll look at all that stuff. I've had several students get washed out of the Secret Service because the Secret Service polygraph examiner walked into the polygraph exam before he even hooked them up the machine, turned his laptop around and shown them their Instagram page and said, explain this. And that was the end of the interview. So you got to be really careful about who you associate with and what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You all live in a time different than when Mike and Jeff and I grew up, where our version of the internet was AOL.com and you had to put a phone on a hookup, and we didn't have, you have a lot of resources. If you're interested in a career in FBI, go to FBI.gov and look, they have a whole section based on careers, and it tells you what they investigate, how they investigate. It tells you what their drug policy is. It tells you what you need to be an FBI agent. You have to pass a physical fitness test. I had a classmate, when we were getting issued our weapons, try to turn his weapon back in and say, I'm working white collar crimes. I don't need a weapon. You have to know you're a law enforcement officer. You're going to be carrying a firearm and being responsible for that weapon. So that's kind of the advice I'd give you as a high school student. Another big piece of advice is STEM, STEM, STEM. Most government agencies now are looking for people with technical background. So major in computer science, major in something technical, scientific and technical. Okay,
Very
Mike,
good.
what's next?
Yeah, so getting back to the politicalization of the FBI and what's been happening over the last, 5 or 6, 8 years.
Right.
When we look at the difference between a lawyer at the FBI who makes a big mistake in what he did there, and he goes to prison, that puts egg on the face of the entire FBI. But one person messing up at the FBI can really get people to think of them in negative ways. Can you talk a little bit to that, like some of the mistakes that FBI folks, lawyers, and others, will go nameless, have made? We've seen their texts in the news and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So back to the political use of the FBI. As I was saying, at 9/11, we decided, Director Mueller came up with a plan for saving the FBI. Unfortunately, under his leadership, he was a very top-down leader, and he didn't like dissent. So we fostered this leadership environment of people, bowing down at the altar of Director Mueller. And I saw it firsthand where we got into this problem of people riding on the coattails of others and getting promoted that really didn't have the qualifications to get promoted. And when you have a leader who's very authoritarian, it doesn't foster free thinking. It doesn't foster, requiring people to make judgment decisions, because you're always deferring to the higher power. And we had this leadership vacuum created over a 12-year period. That's another thing I really had an issue with that director, was he was extended twice. There's a reason he was extended twice. It wasn't because he was a good guy doing a good job. It was because he was somebody that the White House and Congress liked having there, because they weren't going to have problems with him. And it left this vacuum. And you see it. One of my big complaints to my students, we talk about diversity and trying to diversify law enforcement. The Bureau just celebrated its 115th.
Okay, we're losing you there.
One common denominator is with every single director of the FBI for 115 years.
Hey, could you repeat that? We lost you for a second. Just go back about the 115th birthday, Sam. He may be trying to do that right now. I think our connection at some point is not coming through.
Okay.
From him.
Hopefully he will be right back.
Yeah, we'll give him a second.
Yeah.
Because I do not hear anything yet.
How about now?
Now you're back.
Yeah.
How about now?
You're back.
Okay.
You're back.
Okay. So, one of the things I was saying is, for the 115-year history of the FBI, what's the one common denominator of every single FBI director during that 115 years? They're white males. We talk about diversity in the FBI. They're trying to make it a more diverse organization, but every director has been a white male. We had a really phenomenal deputy or executive assistant director, a guy named Michael Mason. And the agents as a whole wanted him appointed as the next director after Director Mueller. And I don't know if he wasn't considered for it or if he wasn't interested in running the FBI, but, black male who would have been a phenomenal representative and would have been a phenomenal director, but he was a prior agent and they don't want to have that there. So we go through this 12 years of this kind of environment where it's very authoritarian, and it doesn't lead to strong leadership. And when you don't have strong leadership, that's when idiots can do stupid things and get away with it. And, I always giggle when I hear this on the media about the deep state FBI and how we're trying to do all this stuff and all these conspiracy theories. In order for a conspiracy to work, you have to have a group of people get together, like-minded people get together to put that conspiracy into action. And I can tell you from 30 years of firsthand experience, you cannot get 6 FBI agents to agree on anything, not even the color of the sky. Somebody's either going to run their mouth to the newspaper, or they're going to run their mouth to a boss because they want to get a promotion, or they're going to, run their mouth to internal affairs because they're one of the conspiracists ticked them off and they want to get revenge. It would take an inordinate amount of communication, coordination to pull something like, these deep state conspiracy theories off. It's hard to kind of explain unless you're actually inside looking, and you see the actual inside working. One of the things I miss most about being a retired agent is,
Question on that. What the point you're making about a conspiracy theory working at the CIA? I've heard the same things. At the CIA, everything was very compartmentalized, where one office does not know what another office is doing because they don't want you to know. They want to keep it as small as possible. For these large conspiracies like blowing up the World Trade Center or killing JFK, there's got to be so many people involved in that. Was it similar at the FBI where when you worked on a case, only certain people were dealing with that information? Was there that compartmentalization that we had at the CIA?
Well, I'll tell you this, Mike. We tried to pattern it after you all, but we did a terrible job of it. And you know, the poster child for that is Robert Hansen. You know, Robert Hansen stole volumes and volumes of secrets from FBI files because he would just go in and troll FBI files. He shut my squad down for a year and a half because of the stuff he leaked to the Russians about what my squad was involved in. We want to say that we're compartmentalized, and you know, that's one thing. Like in the TV and the movies, these FBI agents, they fly here, they fly there, they go all over the country tracking down leads. That's not how it works. You know, each of those individual 56 offices is its own little kingdom. If I'm in the Dallas office and I'm following a subject and I think they're going to go into New Orleans, coordinate with the New Orleans office, and we'll eventually turn it over to the New Orleans agents to conduct the surveillance. We don't just run willy-nilly around the country and operate. We need the concurrence of that division commander and the division we operate in. And it's the same way at headquarters. Headquarters has certain units that are very compartmentalized. You know, the espionage and the counterintelligence units.
Okay. We lost you at espionage and counterintelligence units. So when you come back, Sam, just pick it up there.
Okay.
We lost you at espionage.
Guys.
Yeah, that's okay. We lost you at espionage and counterintelligence units.
And you're back.
Okay, so the espionage and counterintelligence units did a really good job of compartmentalizing. When we had that Hansen investigation, there were only a couple dozen people in the entire government that knew what those investigators were doing. I was on a search team. I was a team leader for a search team in Washington, D.C. when that was going down. And I was basically told, hey, get your team ready for a search on Saturday and Sunday. And I said, okay, what are we searching? We'll tell you later. I said, okay, well, I need to prepare just get your team, make sure nobody's on leave, make sure they're on standby. You and your team are on standby Saturday, Sunday. And that's all I was told about the whole Hansen case was put your team on standby Saturday and Sunday. And then Saturday rolls around. I think it was Saturday or Sunday rolls around, and I'm watching the morning news and I see Hansen getting arrested. I'm like, oh, that's what we're going off to search. So I called in the office. I said, team's ready. You want me to roll? And they decided, nope, we're going to handle this in-house because we don't want to bring other people into this because they didn't know at the time if Hansen had any co-conspirators. So there are some times when we can be really good and compartmentalized, but it's very, very rare and it's very difficult because people have so much access and people just, I'm telling you, unfortunately, in this day and age, people love to run their mouths.
Yeah.
So
go ahead, Jeff.
So I guess people love to run their mouths, and I guess we're getting into, I guess, conspiracy theories. And you know, I've talked to Mike a lot about this, who is part of CIA, and you now as part of FBI. Like there's some common conspiracy theories that are out there that people believe. Is there anything you can tell us about maybe some specific conspiracy theories that you know that you have firsthand knowledge of?
My favorite conspiracy theory.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Jeff, my favorite conspiracy theory is that a plane didn't hit the Pentagon. It was a rocket or something that the U.S. military launched to start this war. I was one of the very first agents that responded to the Pentagon. It was me and my partner, Garrett. And we got there, and we knew when we got there, we weren't going to be allowed anywhere near the impact of the crash site because the building was still burning. And you know, we had heard that, I think by the time we were on the Pentagon, we knew the towers had collapsed. So we knew that was a dangerous situation near there. So one of the things we did was we started police lines and we started covering the highway that runs across the Pentagon. And then I and two other agents, we took.
And I just apologize to everybody watching. I think we're having some internet problems in Texas because of the heat out there. But we'll get Sam back as quick as we can.
Yeah, Sam, we heard you up until
Yeah.
the highway, what you were doing on the highway with your other agents.
Okay. Yeah. So we did a police call where we lined up and we were pulling up pieces of the airplane, looking for any kinds of evidence, any scattered that far. The second thing that I did, I took a couple of agents and a boatload of soldiers. We basically shut down Arlington Cemetery, which is right across the street from the Pentagon. And we did a police call, a search of the entirety of the cemetery. And we almost filled up an entire dumpster full of plane parts. I didn't realize this. I thought like when those oxygen masks come down, I thought there was like a central oxygen tank or something that was all connected. Every seat above the plane has a little blue canister that's the oxygen. We were picking up these blue canisters all over Arlington National Cemetery. So for these people that want to argue that a plane didn't hit the Pentagon, I can assure you, I picked up tons of plane parts from that plane.
Yeah, let
I
me
was
just
responsible
emphasize that.
as an evidence team leader, assistant team leader.
Yeah, and let me just emphasize. I want to emphasize what Sam has said, because I'll tell you, I've heard from people in the church who didn't believe what we read in the newspapers about 9/11 or the Pentagon. We've got a firsthand witness here. I can vouch for him. I grew up with this guy. I know he was in the FBI. I know he was on that scene. And he's telling you folks he found plane parts in the cemetery. And that makes total sense with an impact like that things would just go all over the place. So anything more about that, Sam, evidentiary at the Pentagon, the fact that a plane really did impact that particular location?
Yeah, I hope I have it really handy here. I can't remember what chapter I have. I actually have pictures of some of the plane parts that we picked up from. Mm-hmm. Oh, here it is right here, Pentagon collection. Jeff, can I share my screen?
There should be a place where you can hit the share your screen, I believe. Do you see it in the middle?
Share screen. There it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I can allow it from my end.
There we go. That's the one. Share. Okay. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is literally a piece of the plane that we pulled out from the Pentagon, right? Mm-hmm. Now, this is the north parking lot of the Pentagon. What happened here was we were bringing rubble from the Pentagon down here and putting it in these pads. And this is the operation I was responsible for. Over here on the right, we have green tents. That's where we had people that were organizing the items that we were collecting. And we organized them into potential evidence, classified information. Because remember, this plane hit the Pentagon, so there was a bunch of classified information we had to recover, and human remains and personal effects. And the dump trucks would bring and dump, the rubble here, and we'd spread it out on the tarmac, and then we would literally go through and sift it. And we filled at least a dozen of these dumpsters on the left up with plane parts.
Wow. Got it. Thanks, Sam. Really, really important to get that, someone on the scene, firsthand witness. Okay. Firsthand witness who can verify this.
Here's another crazy story is while we were walking that highway, that road right in front of the Pentagon, my buddy and I noticed that there was literally a yellow taxi cab with the light pole like through the windshield. And there was this guy sitting on the side of the road, and me and my buddy walked up to him and we are like, "Sir, is this your cab?" And he's like, "Yeah." And we're like, are you okay?" And he's like, "I got really lucky, yeah." And he had some scratching on his arms. And we said, "Has a nurse or a doctor, has anybody seen you?" Because there were ambulances there. And he's like, "No." And we're like, "Let's get you to one of the paramedics, sir." So we took him to the paramedics. And it turned out he was, I think, the fiance of one of the professional staff of the FBI, who drove a cab for him. And literally, when that plane clipped, the plane flew right over his cab, and it clipped the light pole, and the light pole fell through his windshield. He missed getting killed by that much.
Wow.
Wow.
So yeah, I just shake my head. When I first came here to Texas, I had to deal with a lot of the public who thought that this was all staged so we could go to war with Afghanistan, and I just continually shake my head that I blame kind of media for this nonsense. The movies, people think that what happens in the movies is real. It's
yeah.
Do you have any other examples of conspiracies that you're training and what you know about the FBI that there's no way these could have been true?
What about JFK?
The current
since
one that really
you're
kind
in
of annoys me.
Dallas, JFK is a big one, Sam. I know we've talked about that before. What are your thoughts on a JFK, conspiracy theories, and to get all those people involved from, wouldn't somebody say something? Yeah.
So, JFK is a typical one, but the problem with JFK is it happened back in the early 60s, and we don't have the technology that we have today. And people did the best with what they had at the time, but we try to hold them to our current standards, and that never works. That never works.
Interesting.
Well. I've actually met one of the investigators at one of the retired agents meetings here in Dallas, who actually was one of the agents responsible for the investigation. I have a chapter. I just wrote my first textbook, Mike. It's a textbook on crime scene investigations, and I have a chapter where I talk about sketching, and I talk about the JFK assassinations, and the work that Dallas Police Department and the FBI did in sketching Dealey Plaza and making common sense out of that whole nightmare. And if you go to the Dealey Museum, the FBI has built a scale model of exactly what happened and how it happened. And I think the biggest problem with the whole JFK assassination still comes down to the autopsy and the path of that crazy bullet. It's just not explainable. So people want to, a chief of police here locally told me one time, he gave me, a really good bit of advice. He says, "Sam, whenever you're in a kitchen and somebody's got a big old pot and an incident occurs, if you don't fill that pot with facts and actual, knowledge for the public, people are going to come in and fill that pot. People on the internet, people in the public, people who have an agenda, they're going to fill that pot for you." So he's very proactive in dealing with the media whenever his police are involved in anything, because he doesn't want to give outsiders the opportunity to come in and say, "What about this? What about that?" Like this question here from Gary about not stopping the 9/11 terrorism seemed to be FBI dropping the ball. I can tell you, Gary, it was a lot more than the FBI dropping the ball. There are a lot of people involved in that intelligence failure.
Let me add to that.
Didn't trust the CIA. The CIA didn't trust the FBI. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will also get to Gary's question. You're right, Gary. There was information that FBI and CIA had on some of those individuals in the country, but the problem was we weren't allowed to share that information. because of the way the FBI was set up and the way the CIA was set up. Now, major changes have been made since 9/11 because of the lack of sharing and communicating between government agencies. So yeah, we'll admit to our mistakes. I don't know if that would have stopped
I can go you one better, Mike.
Yeah.
I can go you one better. By congressional statute, Gary. The FBI did some really shady things back in the 60s. We had things where we were going after civil rights activists and we were going after anti-war protesters. And Congress didn't like what we were doing with our national security apparatus. So they set it up where the national
All right,
okay, Sam, you dropped out at they set it up at the national.
All right, you're back now.
Yeah. Okay, so at the national level, so Congress wasn't happy with what we did back in the 60s, so they established a wall. We called it the Chinese wall between national intelligence and criminal investigations. And I actually had two squads that sat across the hallway from each other in Chicago. One was a squad that ran the criminal investigation of Hamas, and one was a squad that ran the national intelligence, the counterterrorism investigation of Hamas. And they weren't allowed to share information. And they were in the same office in Chicago. And I got to see both because I was at headquarters, and I thought it was absolutely ridiculous that a criminal agent couldn't talk to a national security agent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Gary's got a good comment there. Bureaucracies and turf wars do interfere with us doing a better job. No doubt about that, Gary.
Yeah. I'll tell you another thing, Mike. One thing that nobody wants to talk about is both of us, both the CIA and the FBI, we treated our state and local partners like garbage before 9/11. We didn't share anything with them.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
I tell a lot of people the reason we haven't had another 9/11 style attack in this country isn't because the FBI is so great or the CIA is so great. It's because we have almost 900,000 law enforcement officers who do a great job every day. I've been overseas. I've been in Africa. I've been in the Middle East. I've been in Europe, and I have seen how people police in other countries. I would not trade U.S. law enforcement for anybody in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sam, there's one more question that just came in there. How are privacy trends today affecting how the FBI operates?
It's been a battle we've been having since the 1920s, buddy. Criminals are going to operate and try to operate covertly, and they're going to come up with techniques and they're going to come up with technologies to keep themselves hidden from law enforcement. And law enforcement's going to have to find some way to penetrate that covert operation. And, back in the day, it was use of payphones, and then it was, use of dead drops. And then we got the cell phones, and we got burner phones, and we got pagers. And now we've got a lot of this anonymizing technology on the computer. It's very frustrating, but we're still able to take down, individuals on the dark web like Silk Road and that idiot Penn State who called himself Dread Pirate Roberts. Even though they were on the dark web and they thought they. Were totally protected from the FBI, he still went to jail for selling drugs online. So we're always going to find a way to do our job, to collect the evidence, to prove that somebody. It really is very, very difficult.
Very good, very good.
But to that same thing, Gary, like I said, I've been in these other countries. I don't want to live in those countries. I don't want to live in a country where the FBI can listen to my phone without a warrant. I don't want to live in a country where the CIA can, use satellites to follow me around the house without, follow me around the country without a probable cause. I don't want to live in a country where I can take you out of your house at 2:00 in the morning, throw you in a hole, and not have to provide, some arrest warrant or some probable cause.
Gotcha.
So Sam,
Mike, if I can leave, I don't know how much time we have.
Yeah.
I had a question for Sam. I guess speaking of privacy, so again, there's rules that you follow as far as privacy. And again, there's a lot of the conspiracy people who will say, well, FBI doesn't follow those rules. The FBI does spy on people, or the CIA does spy on people. They don't, that they're in my computer. There's all these things. How would you answer somebody who believes that,
What I tell my students all the time is the CIA, the FBI, the ATF, the DEA, we are an organization made up of human beings. And there has never, ever, ever been a system that is 100% foolproof in recruiting individuals who are 100% moral, 100% law-abiding, 100% of the time. 99% of all FBI agents are people who believe in the Constitution, people who wake up every morning and want to do something for their fellow man and want to do the right thing. But all it takes is that 1% of the bad apples. And we've seen it firsthand with this Crossfire Hurricane nonsense. That wasn't a deep space state conspiracy. That was some moron trying to impress his girlfriend. But it makes it look like the entire FBI is out spying on people. I never woke up in the morning saying, hey, today I'm going to go out and I'm going to mess with Somalis, or I want to go out and I want to mess with Irish Republican Army. That's not how FBI agents operate. And I love my students who say, well, if I type nuclear football into my computer, are the Secret Service going to show up? We don't have the resources. We don't have the time. We don't have the ability to track all that stuff. We don't have the authorization to do that. We don't put little bots out on the computer looking for people to write nuclear football so we can go arrest them.
Yeah, I would say, isn't it like when you have someone's search history, that's like after the fact, after you maybe found other evidence or something, or you had a warrant to search their computer because they're suspected of something?
We had a case here in Dallas where we had an individual who tried to blow up a building in downtown Dallas. And how he came to our attention was we were running an undercover operation on a known jihadist website that we, through another investigation, knew was promoting, this extremist rhetoric and was trying to recruit and radicalize people. And this individual came up on our radar as somebody who was kind of really, really off the spectrum. But before we could do anything, we had to, first determine who he was legally. And then 2, we ran it by our behavioral analysis unit to determine, is he a real deal or is he just some, 12-year-old kid whose parents aren't paying attention to what he's doing on the computer. And we did a lot of, background investigation to determine who this person was and what they were about before we, went full bore on an investigation. And then we had to get, court orders, judges' approvals, the U.S. attorney's approvals. We had to go to FBI headquarters to get approvals. And we had to coordinate with like the Dallas police, the Dallas County Sheriff's Office, all those people. There's a lot of moving parts in these kind of investigations, but certain news medias want to claim that we radicalized this kid just so we could get, the big media splash. Yeah, that's what we don't have anything better to do with our time than to put 300 people, working 20-hour days for, almost 3 months. And all these outside agencies so we can get our, 15 minutes of fame in front of a camera.
Gotcha. Yeah. Thank you, Sam. Did you want to conclude? We're a little bit at the end, towards the end here. We got a couple minutes left, but any final words, Sam, to sum up your program today?
Yeah, I just want to leave your listeners with this one thought. Like I said, we're a group of human beings, and there are going to be bad apples and everything. And I don't excuse any of their behavior. We have had some really atrocious FBI agents like Robert Hansen. We had an FBI agent in Kentucky who killed one of his sources because he got her pregnant. That's abhorrent behavior, but it's not the behavior of the FBI. Don't paint the FBI with a broad brush.
Yeah.
On thousands of FBI employees, agents, analysts, and professional staff who work really, really hard every day because they love this country and they love what it stands for and they want to protect the people in it. And that's what I try to have people focus on, is the positive stories, because those positive stories are never going to make it in the media because that doesn't sell newspapers or doesn't sell ad copy. So
good
know that there are the majority of FBI agents and police officers are good people that are there to help you.
All right. Very good, Sam.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time, Sam. I'm going to let Jeff take us out. Okay.
Yeah, again, thank you, Sam. Definitely, for me, very informative, things I've never thought of before. Because again, I was watching one probably last night, an FBI television show and stuff. And I know those are for entertainment, but what you do, and Mike, again, somebody says thank you for your service. Thank you, Sam, and Mike, and all those who are in law enforcement for the service they do to the country, for doing the things best they can, right? Best you can to keep people safe and enforce the laws and make sure we have a system that we can live in a law abiding country as best we can.
Okay.
Anything you want to end this with, Sam? Anything you want to end with, Sam, before we go?
No, I'm good. Thank you both very much.
All right.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll see everybody again next week. Goodbye.